Get ready to dive deep today because we're going to be unpacking something that is just like everywhere online.
Yeah.
This whole idea of fame in the age of social media, and specifically all the buzz surrounding, YouTuber and musician DDG
Right.
and his relationship with the one and only Halle Berry.
Yeah. Yeah.
Have you seen this?
I have.
People have some really strong opinions about their levels of fame and how they measure up against each other.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And what's so fascinating about this whole thing is it's not just about them, right? It's not just about DDG and Halle Berry. It's this larger conversation about what it even means to be famous, especially in a world that's so dominated by YouTube and TikTok and the whole online landscape.
So it's like a whole different ballgame now.
It really is.
Okay, so let's unpack this a little bit. The source that we're diving into this week is arguing that DDG already had a massive following.
Yeah.
And had achieved some pretty serious success long before, his relationship with Halle Berry was even a thing.
Right.
Way before it hit the headlines.
Yeah.
And they're very passionately defending him against anyone who's saying that he's, quote, only famous because of her.
Right. And that's where I think this idea of fame ecosystems comes into play, right?
Ooh, I like that.
It's almost like two completely different worlds.
Totally.
So you could have someone who's super ingrained in the world of YouTube and online music, and to them, DDG is a household name, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But then you could have someone else and maybe they're, from a slightly older generation, or they're just not as plugged into that world, and they might only know DDG through his relationship with Halle Berry, right?
Right, exactly.
So it's two totally different max of success almost.
Totally. And I think that difference in perspective is such a huge part of this whole debate, right?
Absolutely.
Because our source is really emphasizing DDG's financial success too, how he's been able to support his family through his YouTube and his music career. And they see that as a very real, tangible measure of making it, regardless of who actually knows his content.
Yeah, and it brings up this really interesting question about how we even define success, right?
Totally.
Because like you said, they're pointing to those very tangible markers of success, like being able to provide for your family. But then, like you said, our source also touches on this idea that older generations who maybe didn't grow up with online metrics like YouTube subscribers or Spotify streams
right,
might view DDG's success through a different lens.
Totally. It's so true.
Yeah.
It's my parents, they still very much measure success by, owning a home, having a steady job, all those kind of I don't know, more traditional markers.
Those more traditional. Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, for someone like DDG whose career was really built online,
right,
those markers might look totally different.
Absolutely. And it's that clash, that difference in perspective that really is at the heart of a lot of the debate surrounding DDG and Halle Berry, I think.
Totally. And it gets even I don't know.
Juicier.
Yeah. The source even goes on to compare
Oh, really?
DDG's Spotify listeners to other big name artists.
Wow.
To kind of prove his influence.
Yeah.
They're not just talking.
Right.
They're bringing the receipts, which I kind of love.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that's such a perfect example of how even within the world of online fame, there are these really intense arguments about what actually signifies success, right?
Totally.
What are the metrics?
Yeah.
What are we looking at? And it just highlights how subjective it all is.
Oh, yeah.
One person's definition might be completely different from another person's, and it's all valid in its own way, which I think is kind of cool.
For sure. Speaking of receipts, let's actually dive into some of the comments from DDG's fans.
Okay.
Because they are fired up about this whole debate.
Oh, I bet. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. One comment that really stood out to me said, and I quote, "Halle and DDG don't compare. DDG is a famous content creator. Halle is a celebrity." Just putting it out there. It's they see these two totally separate categories of fame,
Yeah, no, totally. And I think that's such a key distinction, right? Because you can be incredibly well known within a specific niche online.
Right.
Like DDG is, right? With his millions of YouTube subscribers.
Yeah.
And yet you can still be relatively unknown to people who exist outside of that world, right?
Totally.
Which really challenges, I think, our whole traditional idea of what it means to be a celebrity, right?
Totally. And it's so funny because it's then you get into this whole other thread where people are talking about how Halle Berry was actually a fan of DDG's.
Oh, really?
Before they even got together.
Wow.
Like, talk about a plot twist.
Yeah, that really flips the script because
Okay.
it reinforces this idea that, he already had this level of success and recognition that attracted someone like Halle Berry, who is like a Hollywood icon.
Yeah.
So it kind of pokes holes in this whole narrative that he's only achieved fame because of their relationship.
Totally. Like, people were in the comments being like, oh, I knew about DDG way back when. You know?
All right, like before it was cool.
Before they even, yeah. Like, talk about a generational divide, too.
Totally. And it just speaks to how, like, fame is no longer this one-way street that's controlled by traditional media, right?
Totally.
Like, younger generations who've grown up with YouTube and social media,
Yeah.
they might have completely different ideas of who's considered famous based on their own online experiences.
It's true. It's like that whole, I knew about them before they were cool, but, like, amplified by the internet.
Exactly.
But, on the flip side of all this, like, excitement, there's also, some negativity, right? Like, surrounding DDG's success.
Sure.
And our source actually calls out jealousy as being, like, a major factor in some of the criticism that he's facing.
Interesting.
What do you make of that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's definitely a possibility, right? Like, think about it. We see accusations of jealousy in pretty much any competitive field.
Totally.
Especially online, where people are constantly vying for attention and validation.
Yeah.
And then when you throw in these differing perceptions of success that we've been talking about, like traditional versus online fame,
Right.
it's kind of a recipe for those accusations to start flying, right?
It's so true. It's like social media can be such a breeding ground for like comparison and negativity.
Absolutely.
Although I do think that some people might just genuinely be like unfamiliar with DDG and his work. And so they're just like not getting the hype,
Right.
It's messy. It's messy.
It's messy out there.
It really is. Okay, so we've gone pretty deep on this whole DDG Halle Berry thing.
We have.
All the online buzz, the fan reactions.
Yeah.
It's a lot. It's a lot to unpack.
It is.
What are we left with here?
Yeah.
Like, what's the big takeaway
Right.
for our listeners who are,
Yeah.
just as fascinated by this whole thing as I am?
Yeah, I think what this deep dive really reveals is just how complex
Yeah.
and honestly, how messy the idea of fame has become in the age of the internet.
Totally.
It's not just about Hollywood anymore. It's not just about these like traditional gatekeepers. It's about people carving out their own paths and building their own audiences. And that leads to all sorts of different definitions of what it means to be successful, right?
Totally. Like, gone are the days of like needing a record deal or like a movie premiere to be considered famous.
Exactly.
We have micro celebrities, niche communities, algorithms like catapulting people to stardom overnight. It's a whole new ballgame.
Yeah, it's wild. And with that shift, I think, comes a really fundamental change in how we measure success.
Right.
Because what might scream making it to one person could mean absolutely nothing to someone else, especially when you consider the generational divide that we talked about and the different ways that people consume media these days.
It's so true. And that actually reminds me of something else that our source had pointed out, which is like how much the YouTube landscape itself has even changed, right?
Oh, totally.
Like back when DDG hit 1 million subscribers, that was a huge deal. Like,
absolutely.
Like a real like signifier of success.
Right.
But now, with so many creators out there, hitting those milestones might not hold the same weight that they used to.
No, not at all. Which leads to a really interesting question, I think, which is like, in a world that is so saturated with content and online personalities and these constantly shifting metrics, can we even compare different types of fame?
That's a good question.
Like, is it even a useful exercise? Or are we trying to compare apples to oranges,
It's such a good question. Because it's like, at the end of the day, if someone is, building a loyal audience, finding success on their own terms, creating a career that they're like genuinely passionate about, does it really matter if everyone else understands it or not?
Right. That's the $1 million question, isn't it?
Totally.
it's such a nuanced conversation.
It is.
And there are really no easy answers.
Yeah.
But I think one thing that is clear is that, the internet has completely transformed the game of fame.
Totally.
And we're all still kind of trying to figure out
Totally.
the rules as we go,
Yeah, it's like we're all navigating this uncharted territory together.
We are.
So, to our listeners out there,
Yeah.
we leave you with this, what does making it look like
Yeah.
to you
In this crazy online world.
in this crazy world of online fame? And, how do we navigate these different perceptions and potential biases that we encounter online?
Such a good question.
Something to think about.
For sure.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and as always, happy deep diving.